Red Bull might have found a clever solution to the porpoising phenomena that just messed up so many things for F1 drivers this year. However, Mercedes is still struggling with this issue. But why is that? What did Red Bull do differently to fix this issue? Is Red Bull the only team with a solution to this problem? Well, we know you got so many questions, so why not stick till the end and find out how different teams dealt with porpoising. The new technical regulations that were introduced this season were some of the biggest challenges the 2022 Formula 1 teams had to face. The switch from overbody downforce to ground effect philosophy means that this downforce is predominantly generated by airflow under the car, sucking it down to the ground. But then there is a problem. At higher speeds, the air flowing underneath the car can stall. This is due to lack of space for the air to flow cleanly through the space between the ground and the floor of the car. If that happens, the flow stops generating downforce and the car will rise up back to its normal ride height. However, the car gets pushed down immediately once it starts accumulating air again, and the cycle continues. This is called porpoising, and this is not good for both the driver and the air, especially during the straight lines. Mercedes is a team that dominated Formula 1 ever since 2014. But during the 2022 season, they struggled a lot, and even the team's lead driver, Lewis Hamilton, already admitted that he is out of contention to win the 7th world title because of porpoising, a new phenomenon in Formula 1 due to the changes in 2022 season's aerodynamic regulations. Lewis Hamilton said, "We're just working through lots of different scenarios, trying to figure out how to hold on to the downforce and not have it bouncing." Lewis Hamilton's teammate George Russell warned after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix that the physical pain that porpoising is causing him is unsustainable. The bouncing, it really takes your breath away. It's the most extreme I've ever felt, Russell told reporters after the race, in which he finished 4th and Hamilton finished 13th. "I really hope we find a solution, and I hope every team struggling with the bouncing finds a solution, because it's not sustainable for the drivers to continue. This is the first weekend I've truly been struggling with my back, and almost like chest pains from the severity of the bouncing." Aston Martin driver Lance Stroll also admitted that porpoising rattles your brain quite a bit. So how exactly did Red Bull manage to deal with such an issue despite the team dealing with so many reliability issues in the past? According to the Greek motorsport journalist Dimitris Bizas, the Red Bull team has engineered a new rear suspension that can adapt to conditions after hitting 250 km per hour and cuts out the bouncing caused by porpoising. Bizas also suggested that the reigning world champion Max Verstappen would be the very first Red Bull driver to debut with the new technology at the 2022 F1 Bahrain Grand Prix. Things were a lot easier for Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez because Red Bull had the issue much more under control, also thanks to the recent upgrade on RB18. Red Bull introduced a major upgrade on the very last day of testing in Bahrain, with huge changes to the RB18 side pods and floor. You could see 2 notches represented by black arrows that are perpendicular to the side edge of the floor. In between, you could see an S-shaped part of the floor, which should make the side skirts a lot more effective than it was already. These side skirts are created by a vortex of air close off to the floor to the rear. This will then reduce the pressure difference under the car, which is normally responsible for the porpoising effect. Red Bull's floor features an ice skate strake, which is a metal stripe with holes in it, which sits in the rear outer corner of the floor and appears to offer numerous performance advantages. The most obvious one would be that the metal strike inhibits the floor's flexion under heavy load, so it stops porpoising being triggered too early. Red Bull's ice skate strake has several aerodynamic benefits. The surface is not closely aligned with the floor edge drop-off. It also takes an abrupt turn towards the rear edge, which will result in propagation of a vortex. However, keep in mind that the strake has some holes placed along its length, which plays a huge role from an aerodynamic point of view. Red Bull solves this issue in primarily 2 ways. The first is by adding some stiffness directly to this region of the floor, and secondly, by it acting as a skid of sorts in stopping the floor flexing anymore once it has touched the track itself. This component is metal rather than carbon fiber, so it is not going to wear as much. Keep in mind that several Red Bull's rivals were forced to add metal strakes on the upper surface of the floor to prevent the floor from flexing a little too much. But Red Bull clearly did not want to do that because they got the matter already under control. Maybe eventually Red Bull might do it, but as of now, the team does not want to do it considering their top performance. Red Bull is not alone when it comes to solving the porpoising issue. Alpine introduced a new floor at Imola with an inclusion of strake that can be beneficial in terms of weight reduction, as there will be less material needed in the floor to meet the same strength targets. Even Ferrari was able to fix the porpoising issue despite having several images of Charles Leclerc bouncing down the straights in Barcelona. The Edgewing was introduced at the start of the season, with the team showing off the new floor in Australia that featured a new layout. On the second day in Bahrain, the F175 featured a revised floor featuring a long knife-shaped profile on the edge. When the profile rises a little towards the inside, a long groove is created between the raised edge and bodywork. This knife-shaped profile is reinforced with metal clips that you could see on the front wing as well. These clips are needed to counteract deformations at very high speeds, and this will somewhat reduce the porpoising effect. The profile ends in an area where there used to be a finger-like projection to regulate the airflow in the front of the rear wheels, but that finger completely disappeared since the second day of testing. Maybe this solution was a result of direct inspiration from a similar device that was featured on the floor of McLaren, because McLaren was another team that was able to completely fix the porpoising issue, or at least had it under control already in Barcelona. It's quite exciting to see all the research and development that goes into making these cars a lot more drivable. The floor featured a revised edge, discarding the McLaren-style edgewing the team had early in the season. More importantly, it also features a strake mounted beneath the floor in a very similar fashion to Red Bull. Red Bull chief Christian Horner said, "I think the one consistent thing you see is every time the Ferrari is on track, it looks competitive. The McLaren, when it's running, looks competitive. Mercedes, I think, haven't shown their hand yet, and the car looks a bit of a handful to drive. But then there's surprises, like the Williams pace on the long run looks quite competitive, so the form book is impossible to predict." Horner, however, refused to get carried away with his own team's showings in Barcelona and Bahrain. Horner also said, "We were pretty happy in testing last year, and then Mercedes came back at the first race and won it and were very competitive. So it just goes to show that testing is testing. There is no points for 6 days of testing. They start in a week's time, and I think, especially with these new regulations, it's very, very difficult to predict." But there is still one team that suffers from the porpoising issue, and that is Mercedes. But during the final day of winter testing, Mercedes appeared to be less affected after raising the car's ride height. But it was always at the expense of the amount of downforce the car generates while on track. Maybe Red Bull solved the entire issue of porpoising by chance. But even then, that is a good thing, because porpoising can create huge problems, especially when it comes to reliability of the car, and it can also have a huge impact on the driver, making racing extremely uncomfortable, both for the driver and also for the car. Porpoising has been one of the biggest issues of recent times that the Formula 1 teams had to face during the pre-season testing. But it looks like both Red Bull and Ferrari were able to find a solution to this problem more effectively in Bahrain, and Mercedes still has a lot to figure out. Mercedes' solution to the problem lies in the floor design combined with the simplified suspension setup of this year. Maybe Mercedes needs to take notes from Red Bull and Ferrari to get better results in the upcoming seasons. In the end, every team in Formula 1 racing has one primary goal, that is to win a Formula 1 race. But it's not possible for every team to get there. Every team still has got their own interpretation on how to extract the best performance within the FIA regulations. Each team studies their rivals' designs in order to find out an optimum solution for a complex problem, and that complex problem right now might be porpoising, which is still a headache. And the role that the floor aerodynamics play is very critical here.